Brandon, for the show, you talked about watching Orville as well, being all caught up, and another show drops tonight. But talk a little bit about your thoughts on season 3. Have you watched it all along, or is it something you've kind of gotten caught up on, that kind of thing?
I've been watching Orville since it first dropped back, was it 2017? So I've been there since the beginning. It really is, in my estimation, the best show, at least a Western IP on television. It's, great sci-fi, it's got great writing. Now we've got even better special effects. It's not like the special effects were bad to start with, but they were, TV level, TV budget. But they've taken that up and turned it up to 11, and it looks gorgeous. Great captain, great crew. They get along, but they're not afraid to go at each other when needed. Him with Mercer and his buddy Malloy. Mercer is not afraid to listen to him, both as a friend and also as a crewmate, but also somebody that's under his command. That's what makes the dynamics of all this really works out very well. And so far for this season, I loved the way that it started. It's starting on that note, the elephant in the room per se. What the Isaac question? What to do with Isaac? I thought it was a good way to start, but I know that there are a few people out there that do prefer the comedy side of this show more, and they were a little butthurt about it. But even being a little butthurt, I still think that those that preferred the comedy side are coming around to the fact that yes, it was good that they got that done and out of the way. Now they can go do all the exploring. And, the second episode, it was out of my Eldritch nightmares. Let's just put it that way. It really was good. It was a great episode. And the one tonight, it's going to go on to the weird side of the science fiction genre. So, yeah, I'm really impressed with how dynamic the story range has been. And I think it's just going to continue.
Well, I mean, I've heard all the stories about Seth MacFarlane pitching and then being rejected for his Star Trek plan. This is basically Star Trek. This is Star Trek that they can't make. We haven't had decent Star Trek. I've given up on Star Trek since the Abrams trilogy. I haven't watched any of the new stuff, and I'm glad I haven't because I haven't been as scarred as most of the other fans that are out there. And I will tell you, I was very reluctant. I'm not a big Seth MacFarlane fan. My wife really can't stand him. Don't care for a lot of the humor. I think I've been through like the Family Guy stuff and American Dad and all those different things that he's done over the years. I'm kind of like, okay. And the show was pitched back in 2017 to me. It come across as a lot of his humor. Now, I don't know if that was true or not, just the way they did their commercials and their branding. Yeah. And I just kind of stayed away because I wasn't into it. And then I've kind of been coerced, and certain people that won't be named that aren't here tonight, like PJ, just happened to kind of nudge me in the right direction. And I started binging, and I have totally just been blown away about how good the show is. So let me bring in the angel. Let's bring her in. She's the princess. How are you, Mags?
Hi guys. Sorry.
You're fine. Mags is here. MAGITEK Mags is just an incredible YouTube personality who's finally dabbling with some of her own stuff, and we couldn't be more excited. And I'm so blessed that she would come back and spend another night with me talking pop stuff. So, so awesome that you're here, Mags. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I do apologize. I was trying to play NASCAR on the highway to get here. So
well, I trust me. I know and I understand. I'm also just like racing around after work, scarfing down a meal so I can have something in me to keep me going.
Yes.
It's shenanigans central when you're trying to run day jobs and be a YouTuber on the side. So.
Yes.
I was explaining how I didn't get into Orville, and now that I've binged it, and I don't want to do this tonight, but I almost feel like I could do a dive deep on single episodes about the social political stuff that you probably couldn't even do today. Like even 2017, there's transgender topics, circumcision topics, all male stuff. There's racism. There are so many topics that are so inflammatory by today's standards. This show is sort of like a underrated gem. Like I'm just blown away at how good. So for someone who's just binged it literally in the last few weeks, it's just been crazy. And I will see. I agree with what Brandon was saying about the scope of the budget and the effects of season 3 and how it looks is just been phenomenal. So, Max, talk about your journey through Orville. Were you watching from the get go, or kind of how did you come into all this, and where are you at on your love of the fandom of Orville?
Well, I actually kind of I've been hearing about the Orville, and I've seen it through some of the group chats I'm in. I've seen it on Twitter. I mean, we've seen it from PJ, the Orville Nation, and some of his Twitter posts and everything. And you hear it from word of mouth, and that's a very powerful tool as far as a PR perspective is concerned, because it's not forceful promotion, it's actually passionate promotion. And so I was thinking, let me go ahead and jump into the first episode of this season, just to kind of get my dive in head first and in waters that I've never swam before. And I actually really enjoyed that episode, even without any context or understanding behind it all. I actually really enjoyed that episode, and it really had a lot of Star Trek influence, and I can see why people say that that's the case. Mm-hmm. So I am really excited that when I finally do sit down and binge the entire series and actually enjoy it from the first episode to get to season 3, I can't wait to actually access and have that kind of journey that everyone else has had over the years. So I'm looking forward to really plunging myself into the world. I mean, one of the biggest things that I noticed even in season 3, episode 1, is that the world building around the ships, going out on, the ship, it's the ships themselves, and maintenance work, and the galaxy and the look of the ship. It's just so detailed. And I mean, why can't we have that in Star Wars or Star Trek, please? I don't want horses on my starships. I want actually feel like this is a world to be immersed in. And That's what I felt in that episode. So I can't wait to actually give this show proper, how do I put it? Proper attention, just so I could sit down and actually thoroughly enjoy it without distraction. So
binge with purpose.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Hail the Gap Stargate. Brandon, I think she touched on like the philosophy of good writing was you would create characters and they would have a book, a Bible, if you will, of the characters and the rules and all this framework. And even though there's so many parallels to Star Trek, TNG, and all this kind of stuff, you can see they're so faithful to their lore and then continuing to expand it like step by step. And they never let characters, I call it going cold as a writer. Like if you were to write a TV series, and back in the day, they would write 23 episodes, right? You can't ignore a character's arc for more than about 2 or 3 episodes. Otherwise, the audience kind of loses interest. They just become a character they don't care about anymore. This show does so good of like, well, we spent the whole last episode on Bordas. Now we're going to circle back around. We're going to get on to something that has to do with Kelly. Now we're going to circle back around. We'll get on to something that has to do with Isaac. We're going to bring in this character subplot with the doctor. It was like, this show is so underrated compared to anything I've seen. I don't even know. I mean, The Offer that is on Paramount, that's a different topic, derail my brain, how they even ended up on Paramount. But I couldn't even think of like modern TV that this could compare to. Brandon, talk about, because you've watched since the beginning, has there been a lot of conversation about how they have managed to stay faithful and kind of have this great controlled yet expanding universe that they've built?
In my opinion, it all revolves around Seth MacFarlane. The fact that he is so powerful within the 20th century Fox television studio group. He's produced shows for them for years, and he has that clout built in that, basically if he does something, A, he does it wholeheartedly, B, he's going to want to do it his way. Now, my understanding, and I really wish PJ was here because he probably knows more about this than I do, but my understanding was when Seth MacFarlane pitched this, that's exactly right. He wanted to do Star Trek. He wanted to have this be a TNG type of show. The Fox executives wanted it to be Family Guy in space with all the, the fart and dick jokes and the stupid shit like that, which I apologize, but really there a lot of MacFarlane's humor is stupid, but that's his shtick. It works for the comedy side, or at least it used to work on the Family Guy side. I don't think it's as funny as it used to be, but that's a whole separate ball of wax. So he compromised to a point. It started off as like a Star Trek parody type of show, but after those first few episodes, the more serious nature of it kicked in while still maintaining some of the humor, and that's exactly what that first season is. It's trying to find that balance, and in the second season, with the exception of the Bortus and the addiction episode, it hits that stride.
Yeah,
and going further into this, I do think we are going to get some more lighthearted comedic parts in it, but we're not going to have the, as I said, the fart and the dick jokes or that type of language. They've changed the language up a little bit. The swearing has gone down, but the words they use are the ones you can't use on regular TV. But
see,
really,
they have ties to Earth, so sometimes using our jugular profanity works well. I'm very critical of Star Wars with Disney Star Wars. They started bringing in, English curse words. Like in Force Awakens, he uses damn and other things. In this latest episode, Obi-Wan, they refer to an actual ladder. They don't have a word for a ladder. They don't have little things like that. I know it sounds nitpicky, but again, and Stargate said it right. There's a Bible, like a TV series Bible or something like that. And hail to Ironcaster, who popped in while we were listening to that. And I think Brandon is so spot on with his analysis of season 1 and 2 and kind of the way it's evolved. And Mags, I'm pretty clear. You have it. So you didn't really watch 1 and 2. You kind of jumped in at 3, correct?
Yes, I was the crazy one. So
oh, you're fine.
I jumped right in just to, maybe I just wanted to do something completely different where I had no context, because I wanted to test objectivity in such a way from my perspective.
Sure.
And honestly, I can see why people love this show and love talking about this show.
Yeah, I agree.
Just by one episode without context. So I wanted to really come in a very objective position without understanding of it. So just that's a really good thing.
Yeah, War Monkey's here as well, and Gap points out, I think very accurately, that Tom Castellano is with Seth to keep everything in line with continuity.
Yes,
that's very, very true. Ironcaster's putting our links here for us to the Moclans, the Klingons, very clearly, right? And you have sort of Isaac. He's very much the Data character. This fact-driven, stoic, robotic thing. Christian Phantom's here. Hey, brother, how you doing? Hopefully you're doing all right. So I think I got all the chat caught. Boy, it's flying by.
As far as the Moclans go, they are Klingon-esque in my thought process only one way, and that's the whole thing dealing with war. Otherwise, they are polar opposites. I don't think of the Moclans having that type of honor system like the Klingons do, and obviously with the Moclans supposedly being a single-sex race, which that gets blown out of the water in the first season and the second season. They're a lot more complex of a race compared to others, and I like Bortus. I think he is funny, and he has grown quite a bit. He was very, let's say, Moclan-like to start with, but now he's relaxed a bit. Even though when the doctor says, prepare to get a cold, what's the worst that could happen? The sniffles. I am prepared. He just has that stoic nature of his makes for comedic gold and comedic timing.
Right. Max, so, I will apologize in advance if I make references to things in season 1 or 2 that might spoil something for you. I'll try to behave if I can, but
no,
my brain
it's
throws
okay.
things up. So, okay.
It's okay. Because basically for me, in my perspective, just FYI on spoilers, just because you can spoil something, it's not going to take it away from me, because I'm going to experience it from my perspective. So,
that's right.
And I think you will, because the show is so well written. I think the show is so good. And Ironcaster is kind of alluding to this, right? He says there's nothing wrong with jumping into a show. It's a merit of quality writing that can hook a person who hasn't been there from the beginning. That is
exactly
the home run in this show. Like, you were hooked on season 3, episode 1, even though you weren't on the journey along the way to get some of the other little pieces. You want to immediately go back and start watching more. This season was really weaving beautiful tapestry in the episodes. Okay.
Yeah.
It says, and the Moclans are same audience appeal as the Klingons were in TNG. That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
And Troy Pacelli dropped in. Hey, Troy, how are you doing, my friend? The Krill work more as Klingon analogs of war adversaries than the mythos religious belief system. Right.
Yeah. So. Yeah. The Krill definitely view everything through the lens of their religious zealotry, and Make no mistake, they're zealots. Their whole thing is based upon zealotry, and that is a Seth MacFarlane thing. Since he's an atheist, he doesn't particularly care for the dogmas that are out there. So
sure,
why not have ones that are extreme?
Right. Christian Fan, we are going to have to agree to disagree. I was telling Brandon before we even started, I will have to do another video. I couldn't believe there's so many contradictions in this show. I just can't do it. So Bordas plays the comic straight man, and Peter Macon nailed it. Absolutely.
Yes,
I actually had to spend some time looking at the guy and see what else he's done. And yes, this was a fantastic moment with the mustache. It was a freaking great episode.
What is that thing on your lip?
That's the kind of comedy, I think, Mags, when you go back, and I will say this as someone who didn't really care for Seth MacFarlane, even though there's a lot of comedy, and even though, like what Brandon, you were saying about, he's an atheist, there's some religious overtones at times, he's taking jabs at, but he's taking a jab at like being a zealot, not being religious. He's not mocking anyone, and he's also not saying Christian. He's also not saying, slavery in the 1860s, and he's not saying things that are so overwrought and direct right with our world. He's making metaphors and allegories. Max, how much of that did you pick up on just the first episode?
I mean, I didn't really notice it as much because we can all be zealots in our own ideology individually. It doesn't have to be based on religion or politics or anything. I mean, people can be zealot. I mean, I don't want to say this in an ugly way, but they're, what we call as shills. That's a zealot. So basically somebody who can't see beyond their own blinders, and, that it's okay to address that. We have to be addressing our own biases in our each individual lives. And that's a good challenge. That's a good way to challenge you. And without having to directly say what that is, letting the audience actually think for themselves rather than spelling it out for you. That's good writing. That's subtlety. Subtlety is an art form that Hollywood has missed and lacked over a while. Instead, they like to tell you how it is or what it is, instead of actually challenging you to actually think introspectively on it. So, and I think it's beautifully done. When I didn't quite notice it, but I enjoyed it for the show itself, or at least the episode. And it didn't do me harm. It helped me think, and thinking is a good thing, by the way, people.
Absolutely. And I think that obviously there's different episodes along the way, and I could do a deep dive in some of the socio-political stuff on those particular episodes, because there's certain episodes that get into it, and you're getting some of the jokes, like the mustache joke was a great episode. There's a cigarette chain smoking episode with poor Bordas. There's a practical joke episode where Isaac and Malloy are kind of trying to teach Isaac what a practical joke is. It goes awry. But these are little subplots, little side stories that don't derail from the overall story. Even if that's actually a mission, they work it all in so beautifully. And Chris Persia, beast mode. Look at that. Hashtag bring back the mustache. It's so freaking great. And yeah, Troy, we touched on it a little bit, but he's basically pointed out how Seth is such a big Trek fan. He had once done a fan film, had a cameo in DS9 episode, and then he also become a regular on Enterprise. And War Monkeys confirmed, yes, all fan film is great. Seeing him do that, pure love. Yeah, it is. Brandon, do you have? We don't want to spoil too much for Max, but do you have a favorite episode? You have like a 1 or 2 or 3 that you're like, these are the really top ones. I will say I actually am like so. Obviously I've been transparent about my history of being very, spending years writing and playing in the website and political game and data analysis. I'm a very religious person and covering a lot of that kind of stuff. And so for me, a lot of these episodes to me are the ones that challenge all of that. Like, I love all of that. That stuff is so good. This is old school TOS and TNG, where you get into, should what should the Mocklins do with the baby? Should we, how do we handle, intervening in this culture or not? Like, it's like war intervention or not? Is it right we think we're right, but are we right? Like, should we be doing this? Like, there's so many episodes in, I'm actually shocked. The first 2 seasons, you got 12 and then 14, I believe. So you're talking like 26 episodes. It would be hard to whittle down 1 or 2 or 3, but I thought I'd put the pressure on you, bro. That's what I could do.
Well, let's see here. Well, let me do it this way. From season 1, I would have to say my 2 favorites. I would have to say the first one is Majority Rule, and the second one would be Mad Idolatry. Now, for Majority Rule, when you think about governance systems, the one thing that typically never works is true direct democracy. Well, what happens if you have a planet that's exactly what it is, and it's all based upon the popularity of something because of the internet, because of social medias, where everybody has more or less a social credit score. You get up votes, you get into more places. You get down votes, you could eventually be killed because you're down voted. It's way the hell out there, but it's so very true on a lot of things as far as how our current society is trending towards. I thought it was a very interesting study.
That in other countries, right? Doesn't China have a credit score system?
Yeah.
And things like that. And I know there's like Black Mirror episodes. So the premise is, Mags, that basically they live on this up and down voting credit score thing. And oh man, what's the character? Well, John, right? John.
Yeah.
He gets himself.
He does something very stupid.
He did something obnoxious and stupid. So now he's basically going to get. He's going to basically get. He could potentially get the death penalty if the people out there decide that he's just not worthy of, keeping. So it was a fascinating concept of just the social pressures change in the episode, which makes it beautiful because there's a character that kind of likes him and it's like gives it a little positive, but then later finds out he did this, like, oh no, I would negative him now. It's like, wow, this is really just like real life.
Yeah, this is like social media.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is very much like social media today.
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting take of putting something in a show being subtle. By the way, of how you don't need real life situations, but you can have a relatively similar situation possibly in this type of world because of the way that's been built. And you can take a look at that and challenge your way of thinking in your own reality here, outside of the show, and say, this is wrong. What's going on social media? And it's a good way to have a teachable lesson without being overbearing.
Yeah, I thought it was even better writing than the Black Mirror episode because Black Mirror was a lot more on point with like cell phone use and stuff like this. Was a lot more metaphorical as like a whole global way of governance. And I think War Monkey agrees with you, Brandon. That's one of his top favorites. So what's your other favorite, man? What else do you like in season 1? What's the name of the other one? I'm sorry. I don't know the names of the episode as well as I do the context. I binge quickly. I had to keep moving, man. So I don't know the names as well.
Well, the last episode of the season was called Mad Idolatry. Basically a planet that disappears and reappears every so often, and they happen upon the planet. It's not there. It shows up. They go down on the surface to see what's going on. One of the people spots them, so it breaks the rules for first contact, things like that. The kid gets hurt. Kelly heals the kid or mends the wound, and a religion is started based upon that. And
they worship Kelly. Yep.
Yeah, and they worship Kelly, and they try to fix it, and things just keep getting worse until
worse.
About the 4th time after they had Isaac go there to try and tell them no, she's just a person. They figured it out themselves and other things. It's an interesting take on that, but it also shows what happens if you are a more advanced civilization, putting your nose in places where you should not have put your nose to begin with, breaking the rules, the consequences of breaking the rules. Fortunately, with this one, because of the fact that the planet jumps ahead 700 years every time it reappears, it works itself out within the normal space. But had it not, it would have been bad. And of course, Mercer put himself on the line for her, and the Admiral was not happy with either of them.
Ironcaster talks about a girl. That's the one that I was referring to, about the Mocklins and the female characters are not great stuff there. I like mistakes, corrections, and nothing on Earth except fishes, which I love that one because when the name of the episode popped up, I was like, oh, how are they going to work this in? So that was really good. So yeah, some great stuff. Stephen Ransom popping in. Hey, buddy. Awesome. Thanks you for coming in here. Film Threat was making him mad, evidently. So I'm not quite sure what they were talking about over there. We'll have to get caught up on that at some point. But yeah, so War Monkey completely agrees and says those are my exact 2 favorites as well. So before we kind of leave Orville a little bit, Mags, I want to get back to this first episode where, because you didn't have context, I think for me, because if I had any least favorites, it was the very end of season 2 where you have like some time travel stuff and it gets real weird. And episode 1 of season 3 was kind of cleaning some of that up. But I think what was heavy was kind of what Brandon, I think you were saying earlier about like, what are we going to do with Isaac? What's our context with Isaac? And the home run for me is, Max, didn't you feel like you love this character and he's emoting, but he has he's just 2 lights. He doesn't even have eyes. He has 2 lights for eyes. But the mannerism stuff it's brilliantly done.
And of course, coming in without any context, I actually connect with the character, even though he couldn't emote, because I don't know how to describe it, but it's like I could see his emotions without seeing them. And it's strange where it's not really strange. It's really well done how a writer can write a character and have at least one person have that connection with a character who can't even show emotions. That's good, right? That's at least good writing in my book, because at the end of the day, people are going to connect to certain characters differently, but it's, the way he cocks his head, or the way he walks, or even some of the particular words that he uses, and the angle, but also it's also the camera work and the way that the other characters around him, they draw each other out in terms of their character development. And I actually was sad that Isaac did what he did, and he doesn't even emote, but it's like the way they presented it in such a way. And, for spoilers who haven't seen that episode yet, he self deletes himself because he thought that was efficiently the best way to make everybody happy. But yet he came to that conclusion in a different manner, but a conclusion that still gave the same results, which, the audience felt terrible. So it's really well done. So.
Yeah, Ironcastle, I think, points it out beautifully, is that Isaac presents something of a blank template we can all easily insert ourselves and really feel for him. I couldn't agree more. And I also think what you're saying, Mags, because Steve Ransom's pointing out how emotional R2-D2 can be with all of its beeps and twirls and lights and whatever, where we get so much less of that with Isaac. But what was, I think, brilliant was the humans outdo Isaac at his own logic. Like when the scene with the doctor, and she's like, well, no, but you haven't thought about this. And she sort of kind of gives you this big, spoilery, like, oh, by the way, you didn't think about that. I thought it was really, really good. So, because the emotions that Isaac portrays is very subtle, like you were saying, Max, like the way the hands and fingers move, arm levels, tilting of the shoulders, head, those kinds of things. And even just the type of phrasing that he uses just changes that. Oh, wait, let's see. Chris Persia says, I disagree that Isaac does emote, just not facially or perhaps verbally, but in the spirit of old silent era acting, he emotes physically. Yeah. Okay.
Ooh, that's a good point. That's
what I'm trying to get at, I guess. So awesome. Well, Mr. Dr. Professor showed up. So, hey, there he is.
Hi, Ryan.
Ryan, hang in there, man. Hope you're doing well. So, yeah, man, listen, I think we all agree, man. Orville's top notch, man. This is I'm shocked. This is so good. I'm perfectly honest. Not a Seth MacFarlane fan. Some of the jokes are a little weird and out there sometimes because he does seem very. Even if I was being a writer in today's time, I would probably try to write jokes that would be more relevant to now. But he has no problem making 80s and 90s references like off the cuff. Like, I don't understand. Like, I was like, okay, that seems like an obviously dated joke, but the show just keeps moving, just keeps plowing through. So kudos to them. It's great stuff.
Right? And I'm not playing no